As a 50-year member of the Massachusetts Building Trades, as former president of Ironworkers Local 7 in Boston, and as a proud member of the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure here in Congress, I rise in support of and in acknowledgement of the success and benefits to our states, cities, and towns of President Biden's transformational Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, better known as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. Signed by President Biden this past November, this landmark legislation continues to provide critical investments in our nation's infrastructure and transportation systems, including $550 billion in new funding to repair and modernize America's roads, bridges, public transit systems, passenger and freight rail ports, airports, high-speed internet, and water systems. Importantly, the bipartisan infrastructure law also stands as a testament to what we can accomplish together on behalf of the American people when we set aside partisanship and divisiveness in favor of collaboration towards addressing the most urgent needs of the American people. In my own state of Massachusetts, the 8th Congressional District that I represent, we are already putting historic federal funding delivered by the bipartisan infrastructure law into use. We have older infrastructure in Massachusetts, especially the city of Boston and the city of Brockton and the city of Quincy. And over $8.5 billion will be allocated to Massachusetts to support that infrastructure, to rebuild it over the next 5 years. In fact, this year alone, $2 billion in new federal funding has been announced for our state to date, including more than $1.7 billion identified for key transportation and infrastructure projects, considering that 472 of our state bridges and more than 1,100 miles of Massachusetts highway has been declared deficient or in poor condition. This funding will not only be used for structural repairs, but also will serve to reinforce our coastal infrastructure against the devastating impacts of climate change. Our state has already received nearly $190 million in bipartisan infrastructure law funding this year to support lead pipe replacement and other clean and safe water improvements. This funding will be critical to some of our older historic cities, like the city of Brockton, that struggle with toxic chemicals in their water supply. As it does in all 50 states, the bipartisan infrastructure law has already allocated approximately $534 million this year for Massachusetts to improve our public transportation systems. This funding could not be timelier for the residents of Massachusetts in view of the ongoing safety incidents, operating deficiencies, personnel shortages, and service reductions at the MBTA, one of the oldest transit systems in the country. Earlier this year, we also broke ground at a new electric bus maintenance facility in Quincy, Massachusetts, that will serve to accommodate a modern electric fleet of MBTA buses and alleviate the carbon footprint of our public transportation that exacerbates the incidence of asthma and respiratory disease. And just this month, our state delegation joined President Biden at Boston Logan Airport to recognize the $62 million in bipartisan infrastructure law funding that will be used to modernize and increase the climate resilience of our international terminal and its surrounding roadways. That project is expected to create almost 6,000 jobs. Mr. Speaker, the bipartisan infrastructure law is supporting similar projects and job creation across this great country to the enormous benefit of the American people. And it is also, I want to remind my colleagues, a worthwhile example of what Democrats and Republicans can do here in Congress when we work together. Mr. Speaker,